Alright, this is something that I've been thinking about for a couple weeks now. It's just been really swimming in the old noggin. And I was like, you know something? Let's try and sit down and let's try and make a concise, understandable video because I then started to go off into little tangents in my mind. I'm like, well, what about this subject or that topic? It kind of become the whole red tape serial killer, map board thing. But I'm trying to get it all down into a nice, pretty bow for you guys. And I just really want to talk about this with y'all, or if I should break the fourth wall, talk to the camera. But otherwise, let's go with the title of this video first, shall we? Punk and politics. Pretty synonymous with each other, right? But in today's day and age, if a punk band or artist is to sort of preach to their crowd their political views or statements or ideologies, would you still consider it punk? Is it still considered punk? Is it still defined as punk? I don't know, man, because this is like where I really started to think. I'm like, if you go let's go like the basic bitch route or basic bitch examples of bands like Green Day or Rage Against the Machine. And let's say that they're out on tour right now, and let's say that they got this big old video package behind them, and it's of Donald Trump, and like half of his face is Satan, and then the other half's like Adolf Hitler, and then they're, yelling to the crowd about how Trump's a fascist, it's going to be the Fourth Reich of America, and that, he's going to enslave us all. Regardless of if you believe that or not, would you consider those statements punk? I don't think so. Just because it's coming from a punk band doesn't necessarily mean it's punk, at least in my mind. Because if you take those pretty, sort of extreme, beliefs, that's like what, 30% of America right now that kind of hold those, those hypothetical examples that I just came up, those hypothetical political statements. That's like a third of the country, right? Or if we take like a more grounded approach to it, and let's just say somebody like Billy Joel Armstrong of Green Day, he's up on stage and he's like, gets the crowd to shout "fuck Trump" or "fuck MAGA" or "Donald Trump's a bad person" or "Donald Trump's a bad leader." At that point, that's like the 60 million plus Americans that didn't vote for Trump, in which case, fuck me, if they're considered punk, then anything's punk, right? This isn't something, I'm somebody that doesn't like Trump, so that this isn't a video where I'm just trying to write his dick and be like, oh, all these people are wrong, whatever, well, whether it be hypothetical or real. That's not the case. Just the point is that when it comes to punk bands in 2024, almost 2025, giving political takes as something like Donald Trump being a bad person, I no longer think that that's actually punk. That's just like a common belief within like half of America and like a good chunk of the world, right? Like you go down the street, you talk to neighbor Bob, and he's going to say that Donald Trump is Jesus reincarnated. You go down to your neighbor Deborah, and she's going to say that Donald Trump's the Antichrist. It's just that's just kind of the world we live in, right? But if you take something like, well, let me get to that, but I just think that in today's current events where everything is just so intertwined with politics, like you see it everywhere, that it seems to be kind of tough to define punk when it comes to political statements, right? Because if you take something like, let's say, capitalism being bad, then that's like 60% of Twitter, and if the United States should be replaced with Marxism, then that's like 40% of Reddit, But if you take that idea and you put in like 1980s, like Reaganomics, capitalism's king, Cold War, then I would consider that more punk. I don't agree with that political movement. I don't agree with communism or Marxism or what have you, but I think that's definitely a lot more ballsy to be, believing and preaching about that in, like, let's say 1980s Reagan America, that's for sure. Whereas nowadays, if you say that, you're going to get a bunch of people in your inbox and stuff saying, I agree with you, we should be friends, shit like that. But to bring it back to like the basic pitch examples that I brought up with like Green Day or Rage Against the Machine, 20 plus years ago, we had George Bush as president, and the whole anti-Bush movement that they're about when it came to their tours and concerts. Video packages of George Bush, anti-war on terror. We shouldn't be in Iraq during a time where you're being told that Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. We should go into Iraq. Large majority of Americans are in favor of the Iraq War, and if you say you never were, you're a fucking liar. So that I would consider more punk, because that's more outside the realm of what's like socially believed or accepted, or like what should be at that point, what should be a standard, which is go to Iraq, invade Iraq, whereas they were like, no, we shouldn't, right? Even like a more extreme example, it's still in that era, let's say like a punk band or a punk artist is giving their political views about peace and pacifism like a week after 9/11. Fuck yeah, that's punk in my opinion, for obvious reasons we all want to go to war, right? But I think that'll be definitely more punk. But then you also think about various sort of societal and like human topics of in the 80s and 90s, early mid 2000s that you would hear punk bands talk about. So like gay rights, minority rights, anti-religion, or at least just anti-indoctrination, stuff like that. To where at a time that was a lot more taboo, a lot more socially acceptable to not like gays, to hate gays, especially during like the AIDS epidemic and stuff like that. But you get famous cases like Kurt Cobain, saying all the transphobes, homophobes, racists, misogynists, get the fuck out of my concert, you don't belong here. Or somebody like Sinbad O'Connor ripping up the Pope, down with Catholicism. Though she kind of pissed away that whole movement of hers later in life. But regardless, that stuff, I would consider that obviously a lot more punk, because the opposite views were a lot more stronger than it is now. Obviously at this time, the whole gay rights, a little more shaky, but something like religion, if you're to be up on stage as like a punk band or artist, and you're preaching about your political views being anti-Christian or anti-indoctrination or anti-church, that's not punk. That's like 80% of Gen Z, right? It kind of seems like nowadays on the internet, you get a lot more hate if you say you are a Christian, if you say that you're not one, or at least not religious at all, But then it kind of brings me back. I'm like, okay, well, if I don't think punk is, in today's, current events, where everything's just so intertwined in politics, if I don't view those type of statements like Donald Trump is bad or whatever as punk, then would the true way of being a political punk person or a punk band be to not talk about politics, like if the whole standard, the whole norm, the whole sort of rage and want from people of politics to hear what their favorite bands or singers or celebrities have to say about insert topic or situation or politician, if they're all craving for that, then isn't the punk route to be to not even talk about politics? Then you're kind of in an interesting scenario, right? And I do know that, when it comes to politics, it's not stagnant, though the people in charge seem to be, they're all fucking dinosaurs, but, politics, it ebbs and flows, that the pendulum swings both ways, so what is considered standard may not be in the future, or what is like currently underground that I don't know about that might be seen as radical now, 20, 30 years from now, may be common norm, and those people will be seen as trailblazers. I don't know, but regardless, I think just when it comes to a lot of politics that you hear and stuff like punk, or just like an insert genre band or artist that you can think of, whatever it may be, if they're up there just like, hey, government's bad, capitalism's bad, Trump's bad, these are things that we have to work on, so many people have the same ideas that it's just like a common standard or a common belief, right? Because then I think about other topic. This is like where the whole like fucking serial killer red map thing came from. So I start thinking about other situations. I'm like, okay, you take something like talk shows And it doesn't matter which talk show you put on, it's all about Donald Trump, right? They're either talking about Donald Trump, they're either covering news of Donald Trump, or they're either making fun of Donald Trump. So, in that case, is Conan O'Brien punk because he doesn't talk about Trump or politics? Because now he's outside of a realm to where everything's engulfed with politics and like talk shows and entertainment and everything. Then somebody like him who's like, yeah, I'm just going to talk about funny stories and past events and stuff like that. Then is Conan O'Brien the Sex Pistols of talk show hosts? I don't know. It's kind of interesting, but I hope I went about this not as some jackass, like, wannabe punk scholar, just like, oh, in Article 4, Section 17, this is what punk should be, the politics and what defines punk and what... Yeah, I wasn't trying to be that type of jackass, but I'm just kind of thinking here, like, what's like a... just... what might be considered punk through the lens of like an audience member or somebody that likes a band or somebody that holds the same beliefs as like a band that's preaching about what they believe, like Donald Trump, let's say a bad person. Well, then in that case, it's no longer punk, right? It's just a, a common staple that you see pretty much everywhere, at least half of everywhere. But I don't know, man. I don't know. It was just something that I want to talk about. Hopefully that this made sense. Hopefully it kind of worked your brain a bit. Let me know what you think. Am I like completely missing the mark on this? I'm sure I am, but I don't know. It's just something that I've been really, really thinking about. So yeah, you can let me know if you want to chime in. Do you think a lot of statements made by punk bands, punk artists, or just like, insert person with status in general, but would you consider that punk, or is that just like no longer the case? In which case, what do you consider punk now? Is it, like I said, like don't even talk about politics, or I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting one, but anywho, I'll see you guys later. Don't know when that will be, but otherwise, thank you guys for watching and take care.